I am making a quilt for the first time in my life, all thanks to Samantha and this viral jelly roll tutorial that she posted. She made it look just easy enough where I delusioned myself into being like, yeah, I can make a quilt. So I went to my local quilt store. They were fresh out of jelly rolls. I bought these other fabric strips that they put together, and I bought 4 packages because one package is equivalent to half of a jelly roll. You basically lay all your strips out, and then you pick 2 that you want to go together, and you lay them right sides together. And I really like the look of quilts that like aren't very matchy and kind of scrappy looking. So I really tried to not overthink this step. Then you take all your strips and you just sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Being someone who's only sewed garments together before, like I was just amazed at how much actual like sewing you do. Like you sit and you sew for so long. It's so nice. Then you go to your ironing board and you're also going to iron a lot and just press all the seams open. And then you get this little triangle cutter thing and you're going to cut triangles, and you do one the regular way and then you flip it over and you do it upside down, and you just keep doing that, and you do it for a long time. And you basically cut 12 triangles total out of each strip, which will give you 2 hexagons. So each strip of 2 gives you 2 hexagons. And then you're going to end up with a huge pile of triangles. And then I did a little sanity check and then just laid all my triangles out to make sure I had complete hexagons and didn't mess up anything. And then you basically want to like split your hexagon in half. And you're going to sew the 3 pieces of each half together to create like 2 half hexagons. Back at my sewing machine, I'm taking my first 2 triangles that make up a half, and I'm just matching them right sides together, really taking time to match up those seams. Sewing them together, again, it's always a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then once those 2 are together, I will take the last third of that half hexagon and just kind of repeat the process. Make sure that the seams are matched up and sew it together. And then you'll have a nice little half of your hexagon. And then you just repeat that whole process for an obnoxiously long time. I did kind of like find a good rhythm at a certain point. And then basically back to the ironing board. Now in Samantha's tutorial, she said to always press the seams open, but like that was just not working with the tip of the V of the half hexagon. So I just kind of like press them flat. More to come, so stay tuned. In addition to the tutorial that Samantha posted, I did find like a free PDF pattern online that you can also follow. I'll show a little screenshot here of where you can go to find that. Hello and welcome to part 2 of making my first quilt. My kitchen island was not big enough to fit all of my hexagons, so I got a little creative and managed to just make it fit, but I got all my hexagons laid out very nice. And then it was time to organize all of my rows, which is a lot of stacking and then just keeping things nice and organized. I use the clips there to always keep the bottom orientation of my rows because you have to make sure that the hexagons are aligning correctly. You can double and triple check this stuff, but again, it's really important to make sure the orientation of your rows is correct. So I take it over to my sewing machine, and here's how not to do this. You are not just going to match up the edges like this. We're not going to do that, okay? Because if you do, your row is not going to be straight. It's going to be offset. So instead, what you're going to do is you want these little corners on the end, you want them to be offset from the edge by a 1/4 inch. So something like this. And if you're like me and wondering, well, I don't want to measure every time, here's what you do. You just kind of fold your little triangles open and you just make sure that the width of those triangles is matched up. Maybe that's well known. My first row of doing this did not go well. The camera was dead. I don't have footage, but so I'm just taking my time to show you this because I was really confused and things were going terribly wrong. But this is how you can do it. So you just add some clips there and just sew it together. And again, just like everything in this process, you just repeat for an obnoxiously long time. But you can see there, my row is straightish, at least straight enough where I can make up for it with my seam allowances when I put my rows together. Remember when I said the orientation was really important? Yeah, I did mess up. You will need to get your seam ripper out and fix it if you mess up like I did, but you'll get there. At least I did. And then once all your rows are ready, it's time to then attach your rows together. But first, you guessed it, you got to iron. And this is important because you do want to take your time matching up all those seams. So what I did is I matched up my flat seams first, and I would pin those all the way across the top of my row. And then I would come back in and match up the rest of my seams. So you see here, these seams will nest together. It's something like quilters do, I don't know. And the way that you iron your seams is like important for whether you can nest the seams or not. I was not too concerned with it. Like sometimes they nested, sometimes they didn't, and it was just going to be a little bit of a thicker join. And like I wasn't too worried about it. This is my first quilt, you guys. But really, this is just rinse and repeat process. You put some rows together, you press, press, you pin, you sew, and you just keep going until eventually you're sewing 2 big halves together and then you've got a full quilt. And I don't know if quilt backs are a thing, but here's the back of mine. My joining of the rows is not super clean, but it's okay. Because look how gorgeous she is. And I am really proud of like how well my seams matched up. There's some errors, but that's okay. My last step here was just cleaning up the excess overhangs on the sides, and then just the super easy step of making a quilt sandwich. This is part 3 of making my first quilt, and I am piecing together my backing. Now, I'm already like $80 in on the cost of fabric for the front of this, and there is still so much potential for me to ruin everything, so I just went with like a cheap piece of solid color cotton from Joann's. We'll learn later on why this could be a mistake, but for now, it's quilt sandwich time. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this on my floor, it's because I watched this lovely little YouTube tutorial with these little old ladies, and they made the quilt sandwich on the floor, and they made it look so easy, and it's not. This is so sped up. I have so much footage of this, and it is like full body workout. Anyways, you got to baste everything together. I decided to use pins to do my basting. I just put like one in the middle of each hexagon. That's all I really had enough for. And then I was able to use my expert rolling skills to make a little quilt burrito. And I am doing all of this on my just like regular domestic machine. So I actually set up a table behind my sewing machine to just help hold the weight of the blanket. It's a lot of like sewing and maneuvering, sewing and maneuvering. I am using a walking foot here, but that walking foot broke. So I just ended up using my regular presser foot, and it did work fine. It seems like people are very like split and have strong opinions about doing it that way, but it is what it is. I sewed along the seam on the diagonal both ways, and my sewing lines would be really straight if I had taken the time to like draw my lines on first, but I honestly just could not be bothered. But once you have all like the quilting part of it done, you have to corner up and trim all your edges. I have no idea if I was doing this right, to be honest. I think it turned out like straight enough. Now back to the backing fabric that I chose. I went with this light color, and what I learned is that your quilting lines are really going to show. On the one hand, I love how the diamond pattern turned out, and you really get to see it like pop on the back, but my lines aren't straight, and obviously I used my regular presser foot, so there's some bunching. So if I had gone with a pattern fabric, I think the imperfections would have been hidden a little bit more, but all in all, for a first quilt, I think she turned out lovely. So I am super proud of her, and the very last step will be adding the binding. This is the 4th and final part of making my very first quilt. Samantha, who inspired this whole frickin' series, also finished her quilt, and I have linked that video down below. And this video is all about binding, so here I am cutting 2.5-inch strips of this fabric by Tilda Fabrics. All the fabrics in my quilt are by Tilda except for the backing fabric. The Tilda fabric strips that I purchased for this project were actually from my local quilt shop. It's called Cotton and Chocolate Quilt Company in Thousand Oaks, California. While they do have an online store, I don't see anywhere on their website where they actually sell the strips that they make in-house. They call them candy bars. So just kind of a heads up on that, because I've had a lot of people ask me about the fabric. Now, everything I'm doing here for the binding, I am just following a YouTube tutorial that I found like step by step. From what I've gathered, there's like a million different ways to do binding. Everyone kind of does it a little bit differently. But here I'm just essentially creating like a diagonal join to have like one long strip of fabric for the binding. And I needed half a yard of fabric for this size of a quilt. And this is one of the fabrics, one of my favorite actually, that's on like the front of the quilt. So you just basically sew the binding right to the edge. I sewed it from the back. I kind of wish I had done it from the front. And then you do like this special corner thing. Again, I am a newbie, so watch a different video if you're trying to figure out how to do this. And then when you join your strips together at the end, you basically do that same like diagonal join, but I actually messed up. I must have like twisted my fabric extra right here. So it just was really messed up. I had to pick it out and redo it. Thankfully, second time was the charm. And yeah, once I got it attached correctly, it was kind of like magic. And then I just flipped the binding over and pinned it and sewed it again. I didn't take the time to like iron it over or glue baste it, which I've seen people do. I honestly probably should have, but I was really excited to be done, so I didn't. I just clipped it and then sewed. And then you do the corners just like you would do any corner if you're sewing. You just want to make sure you have your needle in the down position, lift your presser foot, flip things over, and just keep going. Someone commented on my last video that the quilter's rule is that if you can't see the imperfection, if you're galloping by on a horse, then it doesn't count, and I have decided that's my new favorite mantra to live by. I've also noticed that all of Quilt Talk likes to do these like standing fancy quilt reveals, so here's mine. I will post one final video with just answering some of the most common questions I saw come in, so if you have one, feel free to drop it below. Something new I learned is that when you wash your finished quilt, it does puff up a little bit, so here's my unglamorous shot of it hanging on my dryer.